Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. It's Maria. Today we are making a Dollar Tree DIYs, a door sign, and wreaths. Let's get to it. Okay, so our first one is Love Lives Here door sign. I used the foam board from the dollar store, and then I used the wreath from the wire wreath from the dollar store. I am actually not using the wreath. I'm actually using it to cut out the shape from the foam board because I am using the foam board as, I guess you could say, the backing. But I have a pack of hearts that I got from the dollar store. Um, and I got two sets, two different designs, and they each have 8 pieces in each. I'm going to use 6 pieces out of one and 6 pieces out of the other. And then I am going to paint them and then I'm going to put it together. Okay, so once everything is painted and dry, I take it off the paper towel and then I bring the wreath back because I'm deciding how I'm going to put this on the small wreath that I did with the foam. I didn't want to put like the same color side by side, so I wanted to do every other. So I did pink, white, and red. Excuse me, I know one goes in the middle, but that one's going to be lifted up with a small piece of the square wood pieces that they have at the dollar store. So you'll see how that turns out in a sec. So I am just trying to picture it to see how it's going to go. And at first it doesn't look like it's going to fit, but kind of measured everything out. That's how I knew I wanted to use 6 of each from each pack. And then I started to put everything in place. Once I did that, I moved on to the next step because I wanted to put Love Lives Here in the middle. So I wanted to make sure that the hearts weren't going to cover the words. So I measured that in place. And then I move on to painting the words on after I glue these hearts in place. So I'm going to glue the hearts in place, make sure everything's ready, and then I'll paint the words onto the wood piece. Since the hearts were already red and white and pink, I didn't want to put the letters in the same color, so I wanted to use black. So that's exactly what I did. I ended up using the black and I peeled the letters off and then I weeded whatever was left on there. And then I put it in place. So I start to put it underneath the wreath because I wanted to make sure, like I said, um, I did it the first time, but then after I glued everything in place, I realized that I didn't push the little wood pieces back to fit it in place. So I had to glue it on the back instead of underneath the hearts like I wanted to originally. Um, but it was fine. That worked out fine anyway. So I put it in the back and then I grabbed some twine just so I can have something to hang it from, and I make a little knot and I glue that on the back. So this completes this project. Okay, so our next craft is called Hey Cupid Door Sign. I got this from the dollar store. This is a hanging sign from the dollar store. You can find this in the wood section. So I ended up painting this in white, and then I used the whatever I printed out from the Cricut. It says Hey Cupid on there, and I put it on top after the paint dries, of course, and then I paint the letters because I used it as a stencil. Um, the vinyl that I got was that I used was from the dollar store. Um, so I figured, like, it's not really to me. I don't know. Everybody has their own opinion on this, but I feel like they don't really stick too well. Um, so I was okay with this one because when I pulled it off, it didn't stick to the paint, which I was okay with. Sometimes I use my other one, my Cricut vinyl, and that one will peel off the paint after it dries. No matter how many hours I let the paint dry. So I felt like this one, it sticks, but it just wasn't gonna peel off my paint. So I didn't. That's why I used this. So after I was done putting that in place, I definitely should have used my transfer tape because I had a hard time doing it that way anyway. But after I did that, I used my paint to paint all the letters and the little hearts and the cupids, and then I peeled it off. Once it was completely dry, I peeled it off, and then I added a cute little bow at the end of that. So if you notice, I left a gap in the top because that's where I'm going to put the bow. This sign is 18 inches long. I printed my vinyl in 15 inches. That way it could be, like, it wouldn't be as long. Like normally I would cover the whole thing, but I didn't want to do that because I wanted to have room for the bow on the top. So I printed it 15 inches long, and then it was 3.5 wide. The board is 4.5 wide. 4.5 inches wide. So then I did the 3.5 inches wide, which gave me space on both sides, which I felt like it was perfect. So when I put it on there, like I always measure my wood before I print anything off of Cricut because I want to make sure that it's the right size. But once I did the size that I would like measure it and print it out the size that I wanted, I moved forward and did everything else. That's how that turned out. But I wanted to make sure that I had the space on the top for the bow. So I glued the bow on top, and then this completes this sign. On to the next one. Okay, so the third one is the ribbon and yarn heart. So I saw this on Pinterest and I thought it was really cute. I never saw how anybody did it, but I ended up doing it my way. So if I'm doing it wrong, I don't even know, to be honest with you. But since I knew it was yarn, I knew it was ribbon, um, I had this big, huge ball of yarn left over from my daughter that she wasn't going to use. So I ended up using it for this, and I felt like it was enough. But I did cut pieces because that yarn is huge and I couldn't put it in between. But anyway, I did cut like a little slit there, and I glued the ribbon onto one of the wires from the heart because I didn't want it to move while I was putting the yarn on. So I ended up putting, like, splitting it in half and then gluing it in place as you see me do there, and then I move on to using the yarn to wrap it around the heart. Okay, so if you ever wrap the heart with anything, you would know that this is like the hardest part to cover because the top end is short and then it extends down in an angle. So when I put it on, it just like the yarn kept sliding off. So I had to put the hot glue on there because if not, it wasn't gonna stay in place. But I ended up covering that half part, and then I flip the ribbon over, and then I do underneath the ribbon, and then I put it above the yarn, and then I do it underneath again, if you see what I'm doing here. And then I do it a few times, and then I go over again, then I cover one, like 2 or 3 lines a couple times, and then I go back to doing the same thing. Doing the curve on the heart was a bit difficult, but I ended up going back later and fixing it because I kind of had to move the ribbon in an angle for it to look good, to look okay, and have that curve from the heart. So I ended up tucking into the piece of yarn that I had there, and I even glued it in place. But I felt like that was a little harder because I kept stopping. But I ended up doing that one like that. The rest of them, I ended up going at the end and just covering it with yarn after I was done. So in this bottom part, it left a piece that it didn't have any ribbon. So I just cut a piece of it, like I completely covered it, and then I cut a piece of ribbon and I put a piece at the bottom. I put some hot glue on the top just to glue that piece in place, and then I covered the sides with some more yarn. And then I added a small string on the back just so I could have something to hang it from. Put a little knot, and then I added some hot glue, and this completes this wreath. So this one turned out really cute in the end. So now we're gonna go on to our last one. Okay, so our fourth and final craft is a tulle heart. So I used some tulle from the dollar store. I had some red left over from Christmas, and then I picked up some white. So the white one, I am gonna wrap around that inner heart, between the inner and the middle. So I wrap around. I put a knot in the bottom just to hold it in place, and then I wrap it around. This one's only 3 yards, so it took, I believe, 1.5 because I didn't finish the second row completely. So I put a knot in the bottom of this, and then I wrap it around both wires, and then I wrap it around the second wire, and then I wrap it around both, and then just the second. So you see it has a space in between, because that's where the red's gonna go. So I wanted to have that gap in the middle so it'd be easier for me to pull it through. But you'll see how I do that next. Okay, so on here I am cutting these 6 inches. I use my mat to measure how many inches I was gonna cut it. I cut them 6 inches, and then I rolled them and cut them 6 inches. I really should have cut them a little longer. Because what I wanted to do was wrap them around the second and the third wire on the wreath, but because I cut them 6 inches, it wasn't long enough, so like to wrap around both, so I was only able to wrap it around just the middle wire. So as you can see, I'm going on that space that it had, and that's where I made the loops for the red one. So I made sure that everything was covered, but I felt like one was missing, or didn't look right with that gap, so I added another one. And then after I do that, I get one of the foam hearts from the dollar store, and then I put that in place. But I didn't like how that wire in the back was looking, so I end up using my wire cutter, and I do cut the last ring out, for like the last heart shape. I do cut that out, but I'm gonna use that for something else another day, so you guys can see what I end up doing it with that piece. And then once I'm done with that, I trim the tulle around the edges just to make sure that it's not looking all wild and crazy. So I try to trim it the same size just so it can look, it looks like the shape of a heart. And then I add the pink glitter heart that they have at the dollar store. So I wanted to have all three colors here. I could have used the red one, but I didn't want to use the red one because I already have the tool that's a lot of red. So that's why I added the pink one instead. This one and the previous one don't have any words in the middle, but I felt like it was fine. But I ended up putting more glue on this one just to give it like the extra hold. And it already has the ribbon, so I didn't need to add a ribbon. But this completes this craft. I hope you liked this video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more. To the next one. Bye!